So that's perhaps quite a lot to take in, but it sets the scene. It poses the problem of integrating spirituality with everyday life. Spirituality in the sense of reality. I should say a little bit about the notion of liberation. For the Indian mind, liberation was about liberation from suffering, and that was embodied in the constant rounds of birth and rebirth, or being reincarnated. But Swami Venkatesananda, the translator, he describes this cycle of birth and rebirth, or reincarnation, which is known as Samsara. He describes it as repetitive history. Repetitive history, which is actually our basic psychological condition. We've got certain patterns which we work out in respect to the world, and we're actually imprisoned by these patterns. We repeat the same ideas, or we put the same ideas, the same beliefs onto reality. And so what we're engaged with here is getting beyond our cyclical patterns. Getting in touch with how things really are. The Yoga Vasishta is a collection of stories, and these stories are designed to orient ourselves to a more accurate perception of how things really are. And these stories are couched in the Hindu tradition, and there are various elements within this tradition which might be awkward for the modern Western mind. But it's best to regard them as stories, not just stories. When we say something is just a story, we tend to be putting it down. It's like the use of the word myth. When we say something is a myth, we're saying it's a complete fabrication. But stories, myths, are like poems, are like poetry. They have another aspect to them. It's another aspect which we engage with. Because why do we engage with myths? Why do we engage with stories? Is it just escapism? Or perhaps we're engaging with something deeper. Something which is to do with our being human. Like music. It somehow seems inappropriate to describe a piece of music as true or false. Although you probably could regard some pieces of music as perhaps not very authentic. But it's beside the point. The point I'm trying to convey is that in music which we respond to, we feel we're responding to something which we don't normally get in touch with through other avenues. Something deeper. And that's the whole point of these stories. They're conveying something, they have an effect on us. And the stories of the Yoga Vasishta are supposed to have a profound effect. This is the claim of the Yoga Vasishta, and it's certainly what I think. It's certainly my experience. So it begins, just to have a recap, it begins with two sages having a discussion. Now within the Hindu context we've got all these wonderful beings, we've got gods, we've got other celestial entities, we've got sages of such wisdom that even the gods come to them for teaching. We have this assumed belief in reincarnation, that you get born again over and over and over until you break out of the cycle. And there's also the possibility of amazing supernormal powers. So this is a wonderful landscape of the Hindu stories which we're entering into. So it begins with 2 stages discussing a spiritual problem. And it's to do with the contrast between 2 paths, the path of work, of performing your duty, and the path of knowledge, or meditation even. This is a conflict which is often experienced in people who regard themselves as being on a spiritual path. They want to get on with their meditation, and very often the daily duties can get in the way of that. And so you get this contrast between your spiritual concerns and your domestic concerns. And the answer that's given is, well, you need both of them. You can't give up one for the other. But there's more to it than that. The one stage starts telling the other one about this guru and his son, and how his son became despondent and thought that he should just get on with his meditation, basically. And so the guru said to his son, he started telling him this story about a messenger from Indra, the king of the gods, who meets a nymph. And the nymph asked the messenger where the messenger was going. And the messenger was going to try and convince this sage to come to heaven, because this sage was engaging in such austerities that he was going to become quite powerful. But this sage wasn't particularly interested in heaven. And so the sage was persuaded to go and see Valmiki, another great sage. And Valmiki is the reputed author of the Yoga Vasishta, so it seems that here he's putting himself into the picture. And it's Valmiki that tells the story of the dialogue between Rama and Vasishta, which is the bulk of the Yoga Vasishta. So let's see what Valmiki's got to say. Valmiki says he is qualified to study this scripture, this dialogue between Rama and Vasishta, who feels, I am bound, I should be liberated. And you're neither totally ignorant nor enlightened. He who deliberates on the means of liberation propounded in this scripture in the forms of stories surely attains liberation from the repetitive history of birth and death. So that's just stating what I've said about the Yoga Vasishta being stories, and these stories can be a means to liberation. I'll explore in more detail what liberation is as we go on. Valmiki continues, I had composed the story of Rama earlier, and I had imparted it to my beloved disciple Bharadvaja. Once when he went to Mount Meru, Bharadvaja narrated it to Brahma, the creator. Highly pleased with this, the latter granted a boon to Bharadvaja, and Bharadvaja sought a boon that all human beings may be freed from unhappiness, and begged of Brahma to find the best way to achieve this. So this is the concern of the Indian spiritual traditions. It's to find a cure for unhappiness. It's common to both Buddhism and Hinduism.